Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. As you well know, this is an unprecedented time for us all. And for our part in BITA, we will continue to show our strength. Strength in understanding, strength in community, and strength in communication. This portal is designed to assist our members and allow us to seek the answers to unanswered questions and create general awareness. Every day now is a skill day. We recognise the unique challenge that COVID-19 presents. We want to help our community with answers to questions that the crisis is raising for them on a daily basis. Our members are pulling together to offer their expertise via online video conferencing to provide you with the advice and answer your questions in real time. Going forward, your feedback and concern raised will help us dictate the subjects for the ongoing video conferencing over the coming weeks. This is a time for solidarity, and this is a time for certain calm. BITA will continue to be BITA, and BITA is very much yours. So I'd like to start this session by introducing you to the first speaker, and that is Martin Mockler from Evans Mockler. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. As Paul touched on, these are unprecedented times. There is a Chinese proverb you may have heard of called, "May you live in interesting times." It's actually a curse, not a blessing. They're also very fast-moving times. So a lot has changed when you consider that the first recorded virus in Italy was the 20th of February, so less than 1 month ago, and 3,000 have died there in the meantime. Everybody's playing catch up, including the government. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers today, but we do have some thoughts and we do have some guidance, and I intend to categorize that into 4 different sections. So the first, and probably the one that we're being asked the most about, is funding, sources of funding. Now, you've seen the announcements probably from Rishi Sunak, the new Chancellor, in the budget last week and then on Tuesday this week. So there's a bazooka-size package of measures totaling about 350 billion, which have been promised to UK PLC. Now, the issue is that those announcements are big and bold and encouraging. But what they don't do at this stage for most of them is come with detailed technical guidance. However, we have got a steer as to what the headline measures will look like. So the biggest one relates to the British Business Bank. Now, the British Business Bank is a bank that facilitates lending to SMEs. People may have heard of the EFG, which is the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Fund, where lenders were able to advance money to businesses if they had a sound business proposal, but insufficient security. And that's the logic of the new facility, which has been called the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, so CBILS for short. That scheme technically becomes operational next Monday, the 23rd of March, but lenders in the UK don't know what it looks like. I've spoken to a number of senior lenders within the banking sector, and the credit committees don't have guidance, but we're all assuming that they will have by Monday. I will answer questions on the British Business Bank and what the CBILS loan facility looks like as best I can. For your reference, it's targeting SMEs, so the definition of an SME for the British Business Bank is a turnover of 41 million or less. Businesses with turnover greater than that will have to apply to the Bank of England. There's a separate facility called the called COVID-19 Corporate Funding Facility. Again, details as to those facilities will become available on Monday. So secondly, we've got support from HMRC, and that has a number of different levels. The first and most obvious one is the time to pay arrangement. And that was introduced in 2009 in the teeth of the Great Recession. That has been a live facility ever since. It has worked quite well. HMRC have obviously been told to relax their criteria. We have several examples over the last 2 days where, for example, companies with corporation tax payments due on the 1st of April, for example, so a June year end in the UK, HMRC have said very simply, no problem, don't pay that on the 1st of April. We'll put it back 3 months, but we would want an update from a director come the end of June to see, can you afford to pay it on the 1st of July? Now, that's encouraging. The 3 months that we're talking about are probably going to be a critical 3 months for businesses in the UK. There's obviously going to be a lot of PAY and CIS and VAT falling due for payment in that 3 month period as well. For example, there's the normal monthly payments, which are due on the 22nd of March, so technically Sunday, so Monday next week. Again, most businesses would probably be thinking long and hard as to whether they can afford to make those payments, because it may be a decision as to whether you make that payment or you pay your staff at the end of March. HMRC, in our view, will take a fairly relaxed approach, assuming that the business can't afford to make those payments or have to make tough commercial decisions between HMRC payments and staff payments. There's also relaxation in terms of statutory sick pay. Again, I'll walk through that in more detail based on the questions coming in. One of the concessions as well in that territory is that no fitness note or unfitness note is required by the GP, because obviously a number of GP surgeries are closed and it's difficult for people to access them. The third sector where there's relief is local government. So business rates have been, if you're in the leisure, hospitality or retail sector, then your business rate relief for 2021, so the year ended April 21, is 100%. So no business rates are required if you're in that sector, so retail, hospitality or leisure. If you're in a small business rate sector, then you can get a grant of up to £10,000. That will increase to £25,000 if your rateable value is £51,000. So quite generous reliefs. Now those reliefs are ultimately backed by central government. So if you look at the local authorities, Gateshead, for example, I had a look earlier, they have those details on their website. But ultimately, the relief for that local authority will be claimed against central government. And the last category I'm happy to cover today are the commercial steps that businesses should consider, because that's where it starts. People are sitting in their offices wondering what the next 3 months will look like. So our view is twofold. You have to keep calm and carry on, because really there's no point losing your head. But by the same token, you do need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Because ultimately, there's no script for what's going to come over the next 3 months. There hasn't been an example ever in world economic history where the economy has closed down. We've had recessions, we've had depressions, we've had nothing like this before. So it is untested. Now, people think that it impacts on certain businesses. I've spoken to a lot of clients whereby, for example, estate agents, there are no sales taking place, there are no viewings taking place, there are no new lettings taking place in a lot of cases. So they're having to send staff home. The solicitors who would normally be dealing with those conveyancing have got no business coming in the door, and any deals that were in progress have been aborted. So a lot of legal practices have already applied for business interruption loans. So it is unusual, it's unparalleled. The government have announced the largest relief in peacetime, 350 billion in total, which is 15% of UK GDP, which is a huge number. Now, so going back to the commercial steps, as well as addressing what the next 3 months will look like, what practical steps can you take on day one or week one? Well, obviously you have to look at your current structure. can you carry your existing overhead? Do you need to make changes? Whether that's in terms of premises, staff. The government doesn't want you to lay people off. That's the clear message. But it's going to be very difficult if you have a small business and your income has ceased, not to at least consider taking a time out from paying some staff. These are going to be very, very difficult decisions. For example, the concept of a layoff. Now, I'm wandering into HR legal territory, and it's not my area of expertise, but I'll give you an example. If you want to lay off staff, you first of all look at your contract of employment. Most contracts probably don't give you the right to lay off staff temporarily. So if that's not in there, you need to speak to your staff and by consent, agree some form of adjustment, whether that's a layoff for a defined period of time, reduced working hours, whatever it might look like. If you have to go down this road and if you don't have the contractual right, or you also don't get consent from the employee, then unfortunately you're looking at redundancies. So these are going to be very difficult decisions that business people will have to take every day and every week for the next 3 months. The other things to think about are, for example, your insurance policy. Have you got a business interruption clause in your insurance policy? If you do, you possibly don't have cover for pandemics, but it is worth checking it, because if you have cover, you can claim that, and that's an early source of relief. The other things to think about are how are you contractually engaged? Now, I'm aware that Henry Hathaway is coming on at 6. Again, I won't stray into that territory. But if you've got contracts with your customers or your clients, you need to look at, can you claim extension of time clauses or anything of that nature to give you breathing space? Because if you're a construction company, for example, and you want to try and keep the site open, that's what most people, that's their inclination. But that decision may be taken from your hands in the coming weeks and months. So what will that look like if you haven't delivered the project, even though it was circumstances beyond your control? The obvious situation is cash flow, because if the cash dries up, then how will you survive? So the logic of the government's approach is to push cash down the pipe, fund the British Business Bank, allow the overdrafts, the term loans, the invoice discounting facilities, and the asset finance to be delivered into UK PLC, into the heart to stop beating. They need to push blood into that system to allow the system to operate, because at the moment, the working assumption is that this is a transitory problem and that this will possibly peak in the UK in June of this year and subside after that. We don't know if that's going to be the case, but that's the working assumption, and that's what these reliefs are generally structured around. The other issues to think about are, for example, what reliefs can you claim that you haven't claimed? Research and development tax credits are a good example. A lot of businesses aren't aware or aren't claiming the R&D tax credits. That's something that the government will be very keen to promote. They were already, but there's a relief that can be refunded in a very short space of time. So they're the 4 main areas I'm happy to take questions on. The British Business Bank, the HMRC reliefs, local government, and then to drill down into any commercial challenges or commercial decisions people want to consider. So what questions have we arising? Okay, a question about HMRC. You may or may not be aware that HMRC have frozen the plan to introduce IR35 on the 6th of April. So that was a significant change to the sector. This wasn't just a construction targeted change, this was a sector-wide change. That's a relief for a lot of companies, primarily because people are very unsure as to how HMRC would enforce the new rules. They had already said that they would go lightly in year 1, but the message is now clear that isn't going to be enforced at all from the 6th of April. So those rules postponed till April 2021. Okay, other questions that are popping up. Yeah, just on the redundancy. How quickly can you make someone redundant? If you have to go down that road, then there's two categories. Firstly, if you've more than 20 people, technically, there should be a 90-day consultation period. Now, I think most people would agree that 90 days would be too long in the life cycle of most businesses. So the pragmatic approach is going to be, if you have to consider layoffs of that size or redundancies of that size, it will have to be done in a much shorter time frame. If the number that you're considering making redundant are less than 20, then you can do it within a week or 2 weeks. Most people would probably go down the layoff route as opposed to redundancy, because it gives everyone breathing space. It's not pleasant for the employee, but it is certainly gives the company breathing space and allows the business to hopefully survive. Reduced working hours is a similar alternative. Another question coming in. Yeah, CITB. No question. CITB will be probably one of the last levies or taxes that anybody should consider paying at the moment. And I don't think that they will be sanctioned in any shape or form for delaying a CITB levy. Ultimately, that's a tax that is levied on construction companies. The relief that will be granted, there's no formal relief for the CITB levy, and it's outside of HMRC's administration, but any sensible person would take the view that CITB levy should be postponed for the time being. Ultimately, I think people need to be aware that they should take a war footing as a business owner or business director. People may be aware the definition of insolvency is if you're unable to pay your debts as they fall due. Now, that's in normal times. These aren't normal times. So any business who has to hunker down and decide not to certainly to reduce its outgoing payments, there'll be no issues from a solvency perspective in that intervening period. It's important that people are making sensible decisions based on the current cash flows. Okay, another question in relation to it's the same theme generally, corporation tax and VAT. The HMRC time to pay is a very robust unit. They've been in operation now for 11 years. Anybody who approaches HMRC will be given time to pay. We've had several examples recently. What they won't do is entertain somebody who is a serial late payer who just never pays their tax or is always receiving penalties. But for most functioning businesses, time to pay will be granted. And our experience so far has been that getting 3 months relief is easy. Okay, back to the business bank questions. So this is probably the most queries we've had over the last week. So the British Business Bank, they are essentially acting as a lender of last resort. So if you have a business that needs funding, so whether that's as I mentioned earlier on, overdraft, a term loan, a invoice discounting facility, or an asset-based finance, you still have to go to your lender. And you still have to produce a business proposal to your lender. Now, it has to be a sound business proposal. It has to make sense. It will have to be accompanied with a cash flow or some form of forecast profit and loss account. But the cash flow would be the most important document. If the lender decides that due to the current circumstances, that proposal makes sense and they would like to lend you that money, but there is insufficient security that you can provide to draw down those funds, then the lender approaches the British Business Bank and states the case and said, we'd like to lend this money. We would normally say no because of insufficient security, but under the circumstances, we want to draw down the CBILS scheme, Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, and advance money to this business. Essentially that's the system. The lender will lend as long as UK PLC or HMRC or the government have said that they will guarantee that money. The problem is there will be challenges because, for example, at the moment, the banks are short-staffed because there are people either self-isolating or just working from home that don't have the normal resources. In addition, their existing customers have already, in some cases, asked for capital holidays. So they want to freeze their payments, either commercial loans or any other form of monthly repayment. So the banks are already dealing with inquiries. So if a business approaches the bank and asks for a fresh loan, the turnaround time is going to be a challenge, not just within the bank, but then in relation to when the bank refers the loan to the British Business Bank. So I think people need to be aware that they need to start the process early. If you are considering a source of funding, you go to your bank ASAP with a business proposal, you engage with the bank, they will say, yes, we're willing to lend this, but we need a guarantee which you can't provide or security you can't provide. So that you can engage with the bank now. You won't have the detailed guidance, or the bank won't have the detailed guidance until next week, but at least you want to be first in that queue because it is going to be a queue and a very large queue. So be aware, engage as soon as you can, and as soon as you've got visibility on a cash flow challenge that you face. Okay. Question about CITB again. Yeah, it's claiming CITB funding for training staff who are either working from home or can't access sites. Again, in principle, the answer is yes. CITB isn't my area of expertise, but the answer is yes. The issue is going to be how quickly will CITB be able to process a refund of the training costs. So, for example, I know that we at BITA partner with Geeson Training. They would be experts in this field. So my strong advice would be to speak to Ian Kilpatrick from Geeson Training and just see how quickly CITB can move in relation to refunds for training costs incurred. Going back to HMRC time to pay. So the time to pay system is designed around the principle that you approach HMRC before the tax is due. And that's an important point, and I omitted to mention it earlier on, so thanks for asking the question. So if you've tax due on the 1st of April, you really need to open the dialogue with HMRC before the 1st of April. That means that you haven't ignored the problem. It means that HMRC they know they're not going to get this money. As I said, our experience and our view is that there will be no significant challenge to them agreeing to your time to pay arrangement. What they have said to us so far is the first 3 months deferral is fine. They will want to revisit that, and they'll want the director to probably contact HMRC directly at the end of that 3-month period. Interestingly, the British Business Bank, the new CBIL loans, the government are paying the interest for the first 6 months. So essentially, if you have debt from the British Business Bank, from your lender, guaranteed by the British Business Bank, then you have an interest-free loan for 6 months. So there's 2 interesting points there. The first one is it's interest-free, which is always helpful. And secondly, the government have structured these over a 6-month period, not a 3-month period. So they're probably anticipating that even if the virus impact on the UK is starting to subside in July or in June, say early July, it may take at least another 3 months for businesses to get back to full operational capacity, whether that is because of broken supply chains or having to restart contracts, or if there's additional prelim issues when it comes to getting back into full operational capacity. So be aware that your time frame here, in our view, is going to be at least 3 months, but probably 6 months before the business sector is back to normal. Question about R&D. HMRC have improved their time frame for making repayments to R&D, and they have increased the resources significantly. They have done so over the last 9 months because they had fallen behind the curve. The question is, will they be able to keep up with demand in relation to R&D claims? Honest answer is we don't know. We think they probably will. I don't see a significant upsurge in R&D claims. I think they have tooled up already to deal with that, and we've seen turnaround times of 14 days in some cases, which is, so I would again stress, if you haven't considered R&D in your business, then you need to speak to an R&D specialist. We're happy to help if we can refer you to an R&D provider to get a claim in and see can it be turned around quickly. Okay, just checking the list of questions, which are in reverse order. Okay. One other point, just going back to the British Business Bank, in terms of criteria, 41 million turnover, as I said, is how they define an SME. You also need to be UK business, which is probably self-explanatory. And also, if you've claimed any state aid in the previous 2 years, you won't be eligible. It's an unlikely set of circumstances that you would fall into that criteria, but just be aware. It's targeted at mainstream UK businesses that haven't relied on state aid and turnover less than 41 million. Again, just to further reiterate, for anybody who's just joined this late, if your turnover is in excess of 41 million, then the Bank of England would be administering the loans for large companies. So, it's similar to the British Business Bank. We don't have visibility on the detailed terms and conditions of those loans, but they're expected that clearly the idea is to get these into the marketplace as soon as possible. But the reality is there will be a lead time. The banks themselves will have their own lead time in terms of processing claims, and then those claims need to be processed by the British Business Bank. So don't expect to get the money back in 1 or 2 working days. So start early, look out at 3-month time frame, perhaps 6 months if you can, and consider what the cash flow requirements are going to be. I appreciate this is a very fast moving situation, and what looks good today could look bad tomorrow, but you do really need to consider all scenarios. Okay.
I think that's it actually, Martin.
Yeah,
your voice sounds like it's disappearing very quickly. So if nobody's got any other questions, I think that's it. This is being recorded, so the recorded will be available and we'll post that to social media. But I think that you managed to answer all the questions there. So thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you everybody for joining us.
I'd like to just to finish off by saying and reiterating what we said in the first instance, it is great initiative to be able to put this online for the BITA community in general. What I would encourage people to do is to give us your feedback on the session in itself, and also give us your ideas of the various areas that you feel concerned for, and that we can address them over the coming weeks and months. And once again, Martin, thank you very much for the first session.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.